Oh my goddess. If I have ever had full body chills excitement for our guest, and not to like rain on anyone else's guesty parade, but freaking George Lizos in the house has been a major part of my spiritual journey in not only friendship, but also mentorship, whether he knows that or not. So it's been incredible to watch George over the last 7 or 8 years since we came across each other on Instagram. We were just reminiscing on like, how long has it been and how did that even happen? And holy smokes, we're still here together. I told George, there's not many people that I have this many books. I'm holding up 3 of his 4-ish books. And we just got one in the mail today. So talk about divine synchronicity, that our paths have crossed all the way from Cyprus to Texas. I mean, holy smokes, the seas although there are a lot of seas in between us, there is no disconnect from our soul family and that connection I feel when you shine your light. And I just recognize that authenticity in you. So George, holy friggin' smokes, thank you for being here. Full circle moment.
Hi, Bridget. Hi, Chris. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for this amazing introduction. It's truly a blessing knowing you for so many years. And like every time we chat, I just feel so uplifted. I feel like our energies are surviving right now, like our outfits.
Yes, it's not a George day if there's not some kind of rainbow sparkle or something. And speaking of George, the George that I met 7, 8 years ago as an expert teacher in Shine School, which Chris was just sharing, you're like the only one that made her cry during the interviews. You really were shining bright back then, but to see you today and to witness not only your journey, but even our journey over the last almost decade, seeing you step into your full power, owning your authentic self, uncovering facets of your talents and your creativity, from acting to singing to pottery. I remember there's a long pottery stick for a little while, to coloring your hair and coming out full force. It has just been, oh, and the podcast changed. We like totally changed, like lit up lightworker to I'm coming out like just the most magical embodied version of yourself. I couldn't have dreamed that. Obviously we evolve, but I couldn't have dreamed that we're here today. So can you take us on a journey of what your evolution has looked like?
Oh my goodness, so many phases to the evolution, but it all started with the start of my spiritual journey, which was a sad kind of start, but it led to amazing things. So I don't regret it. Essentially, when I was 13 years old, growing up in a very small community, a small island of Cyprus, and realizing that I was gay in a society that did not accept any sort of difference, like especially like being gay. It was illegal to be gay until 1994 here in Cyprus. So realizing that, I'm like, you know what, there's no way I'm gonna let yet another label be assigned to me, because I was always like called a weirdo. I was a kid that like loved spending time out in nature, like asking life's big questions while people would like go and have fun in parties. And there was like little old me like being weird out in nature. So
And
I'm like,
talking
you
to
know
the
what, I'm just
fairies.
gonna, yeah, and twerking to fairies. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do what I've always done. I'm just gonna change myself from gay to straight one step at a time. And of course, that never works because I was born to be this way. But 2 years later, when I couldn't change who I was born to be, I'm like, what is the point of living? And that's when I decided to like put an end to it and take my own life. And it was in that dark moment of my life where I was ready to put an end to it that I had that epiphany. And I realized that I had a choice. And the choice was like, fuck what people think, fuck what the church thinks and society thinks, and just learn to love and accept me exactly as I was. And in that moment, I was very spiritual early on, but I was like in the Christian faith. I was an Orthodox Christian, and deep into it, I'm like, that religion has really brought me to like almost wanting to kill myself. So let me try and find out what else I can find. So that's how my spiritual path started. It started from Feng Shui and the Chinese culture. And then I got into Wicca and witchcraft. And then I discovered angels. And then I went into like meditation and positive affirmations and psychology, learning to like heal my past, heal my limiting beliefs, forgive my bullies, forgive myself, learn to love myself. I went through a long phase of like practicing New Age practices, New Age spirituality, and working with different modalities, and still do to a great degree. But the way how it all shifted with me, and I haven't said this publicly yet. I think this is the first time I'm going to say it publicly. 5 years ago, my dad passed away. And 6 months later, my hair went blonde. I signed up to drama school. I decided I wanted to be an actor and musical theater actor as well. I launched a gay sex and relationships podcast, and my light turned on 100 times more than it had before. You knew me before all that transformation happened. And I realized that just the presence of my dad in my life, who was someone who did not accept me, just his presence prevented me from fully stepping into my authenticity, from truly shining my light. And the worst thing about that is that I had no idea this was happening, because it was so subversive, the way that that presence controlled my sense of self, that I couldn't see it. And it was only after he was gone, I'm like, I don't need to hide anymore. I don't need to manage his emotions anymore. I can just be myself. And I've realized through this journey that our journey, our path, our purpose is multidimensional. Yes, we have a very specific mission, and that's what I talk about in Lightworkers Gotta Work in my second book. We have a very specific mission we're here to fulfill, but that mission is meant to be fulfilled through many different expressions. Patriarchy wants us to limit ourselves into one expression, one job, one career, but we're not meant to just have one career. If we want to, we can have as many careers as we want, as long as we are taking it one step at a time and we're not overworking ourselves, but really embracing our talents. And I'm just very grateful that I was able to step into that next phase of myself through this journey.
Good gosh, George. I mean, the power of that story, because there's something that's so important about spirituality and how, to me, it differs so much from religion. Religion is a structure that someone hands to you and says, this is it. And spirituality is more of a, here's a flashlight, you're in the darkness, go figure it out. And I feel like the people, there comes a point in your life where all the religions and all the things that you learn in Sunday school, it's almost like it's just not enough. You just can't pull enough out of the book. And at some point you go, let me figure it out. Let me try this on. It's like going to restaurants your whole life and then finally figuring out that you can cook your own food. It's like, whoa, I can make this just the way that the right amount of salt, the right amount of garlic, the right amount of everything. And it seems like in such a beautiful way you've done that. It's amazing that you've had the bravery and the awareness to realize how, I mean, it's tough when it's close family. It's tough when it's your dad or when it's your mom. It's hard to say, I'm going to break these ties. But one thing that I really want to touch on is the self-love aspect. How do you feel like self-love has contributed to your growth, and how has it contributed to your evolution through your spirituality?
I love that question, because self-love is a fancy word that has become very mainstream, and it has been associated with like, oh, giving yourself like a bubble bath, or treating yourself to a facial, or just buying yourself a nice outfit. But it's way more than that, as we know. It has to do with doing the inner work. It has to do with facing your darker side. It has to do with taking action towards your well-being. It has to do with setting up boundaries. It has to do with embodying self-love. So self-love has been probably the most important practice that I've brought into my life, that has allowed me to evolve through the years. Because at every stage, whatever phase we're going towards, there is a new level of self-love we have to embrace to fully realize that next stage. Because there's always more that comes up to release. When we're expanding into a new version of ourselves, expansion requires getting out of our comfort zone. And to get out of our comfort zone and really own that, we need to release fears, limiting beliefs, frustrations, whatever there is on the way that's preventing us from doing so. Self-love, I feel, is the step we have to take to reach that, to overcome that obstacle and find that. And it can take many forms. It's setting up boundaries with your time. It's realizing that our time is important. And by saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else, and really prioritizing that. It has to do with like being courageous enough to look within and identify what the fears and the limiting beliefs are there that are preventing me from loving ourselves. It has to do with realizing how society and your family and all the systems we're in are trying to limit us, and having the courage to say, you know what? No, I'm going to choose me instead of that. And of course, it has to do with treating yourself to something. And of course, it has to do with keeping your hair blonde if you need to. I auditioned for something, and he offered me the acting part, and they wanted me to dye my hair black, and I'm like, no, thank you. I'm just gonna go for parts that want blonde guys. Yeah. That's self-love for me, because I know that's what makes me happy. I'm not gonna change myself for a part.
I think you gave the perfect definition of what self-love is, because self-love does embody the shadows, and it is integrating both the darkness and the light and embracing all parts of yourself. Because when we deny those darker parts or those triggers, they tend to unconsciously creep into our reality and attract to us opportunities, situations, relationships that reflect back that fear, that what is rooted in fear. So when we can look within and say, I accept, the anger that I have within me, and I now understand it was a tool to help get me through a certain chapter in my life, and I no longer need to rely on that as number one. I can rely on some bubble baths and, dyeing my hair and to feel better, to release that anger. So I really love that you talk about the holistic view of what self-love is. We all want our nails done, but can you get your nails done and not be triggered by everything in your external environment?
Yeah, and something that came to mind right now, because when I think of self-love and the ancient gods and goddesses, something that I talk about in my new book, I think about Aphrodite. Because Aphrodite, not how she's marketed right now as a goddess of love, sex, and beauty, but she embraces all expressions of love. All the gods and goddesses, they have epithets, and therefore adjectives, different types of expressions. So Aphrodite is also Aphrodite, the celestial Aphrodite. In Greek, it's Aphrodite Urania, which means celestial, and therefore that represents spiritual love, oneness, agape. We have Aphrodite Pandemos, which means Aphrodite that belongs to everyone, and that is the sexual type of Aphrodite, belonging to everyone, orgies. That's how she was venerated here in Cyprus, part of it. We also have Aphrodite Philomedes, which means the smiling Aphrodite, which is all about flirting. And we also have self-loving Aphrodite, which is all about looking within. So aspects of Aphrodite are kalos and kosmisis. Kalos means inner beauty, and kosmisis means outer beauty. And the whole idea behind that is that there's nothing wrong with inner beauty or outer beauty, adorning yourself with different jewels, for example, or whatever it is, makeup, your hair, etc., as long as it's coming from an inner state of self-love and an inner state of beauty. And I love that Aphrodite embraces all of those aspects. And I believe that we can all find Aphrodite within us, because the reason I connected with her for so many years is because I was not accepting myself. I was not accepting my body. I was not accepting my sexuality. I had a lot of shame, and self-love was about learning to love those aspects of myself, but most importantly, learning to embrace all aspects of myself. Sexual aspect, the spiritual kind of love, the sensual kind of love, and the self kind of love. Because I feel that modern religion, as Chris, you said earlier, modern religion imposes dogma on us. And what I feel the Christian religion has done and is doing is creating this idea that love is only love when it's spiritual love, when it's that kind of purity and connectedness. But there are different expressions of love that are also important, and those are the kinds of love that are embodied.
I love that you bring up the inner and outer beauty, because that tracks so well and aligns with the profession that I've been in for most of my life. And that's 20 years behind the chair, making women look beautiful on the outside. But over the last 10 plus years, I realized that how they feel on the inside is ultimately what radiates. It's shining from the inside, which is why I named my Oracle deck that. Is how do we how do we shine from the inside? And I was making everyone look beautiful on the outside, but when they talk shit about themselves, I'm not good enough, I hate my teeth, oh my God, this, that, I should have wore makeup, blah, 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 blah. I realize I can make you look amazing on the outside, but if you don't love yourself, if you don't feel good, if you're not confident in your own skin and you're comfortable taking off the masks and letting your authenticity shine, then you're missing a part of that self-love. And so for me, I went on this mission. I didn't know I was going on a spiritual mission to uncover how do I get women to love themselves and accept themselves on a deeper inner level. I didn't know I was signing up for this. I'm glad no one told me, because I would have been like, whoa, that's a big burden to climb. But looking back 12 plus years, I realized the importance of that piece. And that obviously is what was missing for so long with everyone just no judgment, but Botox, fake boobs, fat loss pills and injections and all that stuff. Like, you mentioned doing it from a place of self-love when we adorn ourselves. And when you said that, it reminded me of my 19-year-old self who took the razor in her hand and dyed her hair black because I didn't love myself. I hated the way that I looked, that I felt about myself on the inside. And I thought, if I can, my mom's a hairdresser, if I can take her razor and just cut off some of this bullshit about myself, maybe I'll finally love and accept myself. And I realized that I went into the beauty profession with the external, trying to work my way from the outside in to make myself feel and look beautiful and accept who I authentically was. So I love that you bring that up, because it just touches my little hairdresser heart in knowing that this journey of finding self-love, definitely we all started on the outside. We're like, if we fix the outside, then maybe we'll feel better on the inside. But in manifestation and the spiritual realm, we know that what we feel and sense and experience on the inside is just a projection and reflection of what we experience on the outside. So I'm curious, gosh, I really just don't want to glaze over the fact that you brought up that you didn't feel unconsciously able to express yourself while your father was still present, because my father was a Christian preacher. And he said to me before he died, I can never have a normal conversation with you. You're always talking about manifesting in the moon. And I realized that same like you, when we have those oppressive, and he passed in 2021, when those oppressive energies leave your life, it creates a vortex and room for you to fill with what you've been holding back. So I appreciate your vulnerability and opening up and sharing that, because a lot of us light workers choose difficult parents so that we can learn our lessons early and step into leadership now, so that we can help, pave the way, trailblaze.
And I do appreciate him, like, for what he taught me. I dedicated was it my first one? One of my books to him. I think it was the second one, because of all the ways that he triggered me and all the ways that he helped me. Or is it my mom? I think it's my mom. I'm not sure.
Oh, it's a personal note from you. I love it.
I think that one is to my mom. I think it was the first one that I dedicated to my dad. But essentially, oh no, now I remember. I wrote, when I gave my dad my first book, Be the Guru, I wrote a personal note in that book. And in that note, I told him, like, thank you for all the ways you've triggered me through the years. Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have written this book right now. So I told him then, and he certainly knows now, that he's triggering, and what he brought into the mix was here to help me become who I am. And he did accept me in his moment of passing, because the way he passed away was very interesting. He died from cancer, and I went to see him. I was the last person who was there with him in the hospital. And I went earlier that day, and I said what I thought I had to say when someone is passing. I'm like, oh, blah, 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 I love you, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't feel it. And then I was in denial for the rest of the day. And then in the evening, I'm like, I have to go. He was in a semi-comatose state. And then I sat next to him. I knew he could hear me, because he could like touch my hand and like pinch me a little bit. And I told him very honestly, I'm like, we couldn't see eye to eye in this life. But don't worry, we have many lifetimes together. Later on, we can sort things out. And let me remind you that my job is to talk to the dead. So you're not going to get rid of me. I'm not going to get rid of you. We're going to be able to communicate. It's all good. I appreciate you for everything. I still love you despite our differences. You can go in peace. And 5 minutes later, he passed away. He was waiting for that moment to make peace with me before he went away. And I had left, and they told me I went back. And when I found out, I just felt this surge of love flow through my body, and I started crying. And I just like scream out into my car. I'm like, now you accept me, finally. Because in that moment, I felt that acceptance. And I'm like, did it have to wait? Did it have to wait for this moment to feel your love? But it doesn't really matter, because now I feel it, and I feel him with me, supporting me and loving me no matter what.
Yeah. Well, based on his stubbornness, I think it did have to wait till that dying moment, you know?
Yeah. And now I see him. The irony is that he comes to my dreams, and we go to Glastonbury to crystal shops together, and we choose crystals together. And I'm like, give me a break.
You know, when my biological father passed in 2008, so now I've had two dads that have passed. In 2008, I was in a sensory deprivation tank, a floating tank, and I heard my biological father speak to me, and he said, "Hey, baby girl." And I'm like trying to look around in the float tank, but it's black. I can't feel or see anything. I'm like, oh my God, that's his voice. Like, whoa, that was weird. And I was like, hey, I'm like talking to myself in this tank. And he just said one phrase to me that changed my life and altered my course. He said, I had to pass in the physical world so I could guide you from the spiritual world. My biological father was an abusive alcoholic that spent most of his life, my life, in jail. So he definitely was not a role model or a father figure of any kind. And in fact, when he passed, I felt so much peace, so much forgiveness and acceptance, and understanding his journey and story and how that affected me and my abandonment wounds and things like that. But him guiding me from the spiritual world has deepened our relationship. Same with my stepfather as well, because when we go through hypnosis to talk to our past loved ones, there's no more tension and limited thinking. It's just pure love, like you said. And it's such a freeing experience to have. And I'm so thankful that you're sharing that you do get that connection, because I wrote off dads. I was like, no way, forget it. Like, I'm glad I broke the cycle and married the perfect male partner that's not a narcissist. But in his passing, and that conversation through the spiritual world has truly found a healing balm and a guide who is bringing me opportunities and opening the next door down the woo-woo rabbit hole. And I have him to thank, whereas he would have done nothing for me in the physical world, he certainly made up for in the spiritual world.
I feel the exact same way. I feel that he's with me, guiding me, and I feel like I've expanded so much more as a result of his guidance, because he gets to work through me and fulfill his desires through me, because we do have common desires. So it's fascinating how, when we're open to it through like communication with the spirit world, we can receive that guidance more consciously and do something with it.
You know, we're tapping on a few pieces that are really gold. The first one to circle back on is that there's nothing wrong with wanting to improve your outside physical world. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do whatever you want to your body. There's nothing wrong with wearing phenomenal clothes. There's nothing wrong with looking good. All of that only matters through your intention. If you're doing it because you want people to love and approve of you, because you don't love and approve of yourself, you're never going to fill the cup. It's never going to happen. You're just going to dig a bigger hole. But the second that you start to love yourself, you notice that the outward expression just becomes another way for you to play and dance in this world. It becomes another way for you to be your own unique self, and other people start to see and recognize that. But when you do it out of that, like, oh, I need someone to give me a compliment. I need someone to tell me how good I look. I need someone to fill me up. All of the compliments fall on deaf ears, because if you don't also believe it, your subconscious mind just totally blocks it. So even if you hear it, it's just we've all had that person. We're like, oh my gosh, you look beautiful today. Like, oh, me, not me. And you're like, what the hell? What are you doing? Like, why would you even do that? The second big thing is that there's so much, especially in we're talking about the light worker journey, people who are really on that, wanting to be on that spiritual path, wanting to help the world out. There's so much merit in the fact that a lot of the people that are here to trigger us are the exact people that we need in our lives, because it spurs the transformation. Without them, if we just had phenomenal, loving parents and everything just kind of worked out great in our lives, we wouldn't do anything. We'd sit on our ass. It'd just be Netflix on the couch. It'd be a joke.
I mean, they do say ignorance is bliss.
But but it's not fun. It doesn't give you like the deeper, it doesn't give you like the sustenance of life. You miss out. You just sit on the surface and you just watch from the peripheral instead of actually feeling like you're alive. The second that you deal with something really hard, and a lot of times it happens at those deathbed moments. It's sad that it happens that way, but it does happen that way. The moment you forgive the person, and then on top of that, to go a little further beyond, to thank them, to say, I needed your nonsense. I needed it my whole life. I didn't know it. And good God, did it piss me off. But only because of you am I able to be who I am today. And like having that kind of awareness about what people do in your life and what they do for you, even if you don't approve of it, even if it's ugly sometimes, even if it hurts, even if it brings up the worst, deepest fears, it's that forgiveness that brings about by far the biggest transformation. That's the only reason that a lot of people stay stuck in life, is because they'd rather hold on to, I'm a victim, people were mean to me, this isn't working out for my highest good, even though the whole time it really was. So George, I want to ask you, as people who are light workers, especially the people who are beginning to sort of walk into this and be like, I'm waking up, I'm starting to figure out there's more to me, there's more to life, there's more to what I want to be. They're breaking out of that barrier and that box that you talk about. What do they need to be focused on? Like, what are those things that they should be looking at? Like, what are those obstacles that are going to come up, and how can they start to prepare themselves for that early on?
I love that question because I feel that everything we're dealing with, every limiting belief that we have is rooted in experiences we've had in the past, as well as in the systems we're part of. And I want to preface this with this understanding that to truly be a light worker, you first need to be a shadow worker. And a lot of the work that I do these days, aside from like helping people build up their energy through like energy clearing, etc., is a lot of clearing of stuff. And really what helped me, a process that helped me do so really powerfully over the past few years, actually, is a process that I use. It's called integral eye movement therapy. It's very connected with EMDR that has to do with healing trauma. But it's this idea that everything we say about ourselves, let's say, for example, I say, I am so-and-so, or I cannot do this, or when we use pronouns, those pronouns are there because we've learned to identify in a certain way. If I say I'm not good enough, I have learned to identify that I'm not good enough. And when we start interrogating that I am, how old is I, and what's happening around I, then we start unfolding the different memories from our past, and sometimes from past lives, making us aware of all the systems, whether they are societal systems, school systems, church systems, that created those limiting beliefs within us. And there are many different ways we can do this. We don't need to use this process. We can do journaling. We can do energy work and tap into our aura and identify those limiting beliefs there. We can do like therapy. There are so many different ways, and they're all looking back, but with a forward mindset. And therefore, how have I learned to be this way, and what can I do to unlearn that? I know you do hypnosis as well, so it's a great way to like go back there and reprogram our subconscious mind. So many different ways to bring the unconscious into the conscious, and therefore to be a shadow worker, to go into the shadow and realize, why do I believe this about myself, and challenge it. Do I really believe this about myself, or have other people taught me to believe this about myself? So really, for me, light work these days is all about this untangling process, a lot of the untangling process. And then let's build that up with manifestation. And let's bring the beauty aspect in. You know, going back to the beauty thing, beauty is a spiritual practice since the ancient times. When you think of like tribes, like ancient cultures, they used makeup and different adornments on their body to change their consciousness so they could get into a state. So they allow that connection with source to inspire a sense of transformation. That's why actors wear costumes, and as soon as you put on a costume, you become a different character. It helps you step into that character because it's a practice of like entering into a different state of consciousness. So again, it's all about untangling and then creating. Beauty is a way of creating and building up your newfound self, light working. But first, you have to do the shadow working too.
I definitely agree. In fact, I've been hosting new and full moon goddess gatherings for the last 6+ years, and I started gravitating more and more towards full moon release rituals rather than manifestation, because at this point, as light workers, you should know how to set your intentions and manifest. But what most people get stuck with is the releasing and surrendering process of creating space to call in more for what they're asking for, or how to embody and align with, they're calling in more, but they're holding on to the old. How do we cut that tie between the past and the present? So I think you nailed it. Light working, it starts in shadow work. And I just had that conversation on the Serious Joy platform this morning, just all around astrology, about how all of us light workers, I mean, 2012 wake up call, we've been doing the inner work, working, integrating, remembering, releasing. And now with this solar eclipse that we just had, I truly feel that we've walked through a portal of the shadow work. Is not that it's ever going to be fully done. Maybe it will, but we've come to a conscious place where we are aware of what's going on. We're not just victim to our reaction to what's going on. We're actually consciously creating and responding to every given situation with all that we've learned and integrated into ourselves. You know, I'm really curious, because when I think about all of your books, from Be the Guru to Lightworkers Gotta Work to the Protect Your Light, and then Secrets of Greek Mysticism. Now, of course, you're from Cyprus, you've spent time in Greece, so you're who better to share this wisdom with. But can you take me on that journey of, like, you obviously your soul has been called to share through the written word. What inspired you to create the Secrets of Greek Mysticism? Like, why it feels like a alignment, but also a left turn. So can you share like a little bit more on what inspired you to go deeper into Greek mysticism?
So what ties all my books together and all my work is my purpose in this life. I feel has to do with helping other people find and follow their life purpose. And I do this through many different ways. Like, Be the Guru is all about setting your spiritual practice. Lightworkers Gotta Work is literally about finding your life purpose and defining it and working towards it. Protect Your Light is about protecting your energy so that you can follow your purpose. And Secrets of Greek Mysticism is the ancient Greek way of following and fulfilling your life purpose. So it's a new system. But really what brought me to this point was that in 2017, I was working a full-time job in London while running my spiritual business part-time. And that's when we met, Brit, actually. Yeah. I think it was 2017. That's when I was starting out. And I was running my business part-time, writing my first book, Be the Guru. And what that meant was that I was working a 9-to-5 job. I would come home, work on my own business until midnight, go to sleep, and repeat. Weekends were also dedicated to my business. I reached a point 3 years later that I burned myself out. And I realized that because I woke up one morning intending to go to work, but my body just wouldn't function. And I couldn't move. And I had to call in sick. And then I realized, okay, something needs to change. Long story short, I went to Glastonbury in the UK. I did a past life regression, during which I realized that, and I saw myself being a prostitute in a past life who became pregnant with one of my clients. When the client found out, he stabbed me in the womb, killing the baby. In that moment, I made a karmic contract, a promise that I would reject my feminine energy and abuse my masculine energy and solely depend on my masculine energy. How did I do this in this lifetime? I tried to take my own life because I was gay, aka embracing my feminine energy. How was I doing it later on, years later, after I quote unquote healed from that? I was subversively killing myself by burning myself out and therefore repressing my feminine energy and depending on my masculine energy. So I come out of the past life regression, tears running down my cheeks. I run out of the room and I'm like, I need to connect with the goddess, with the divine feminine. Right across the street, of course, there was a goddess temple of Glastonbury. So I storm inside the temple. I find one of the priestesses and I'm like, I need to connect with the goddess. And she stares at me like, what's wrong with you? Like, calm down. She runs me through the Celtic goddesses, which I find fascinating. But I'm like, you know what? I love the Celtic goddesses, but I'm not Celtic. That's not my ancestry. I wonder if I can find the equivalent to the Greek pantheon. So I go back to my Airbnb. I search online. 2017 was the year that the Greek government finally legalized Hellenic polytheism as an official religion. Before it was illegal. It wasn't a legal religion. And the Greek pagans in Greece, they were holding the first ever priesthood training. So that same night, I signed up and I went to Athens like a few months later and attended the first ever official priesthood training. So I'm the first official priest in Cyprus, basically, and trained to Hellenic polytheism, wanting to connect with the goddess, just the goddess. But when I actually went to the training, I realized it wasn't just about the goddess. It wasn't just about the divine feminine. I learned that for the divine feminine to truly rise, the divine masculine has to also rise. And we need to stop rejecting that and vilifying the masculine and bringing both into creation. So that's when this new path of my life started, where I started transitioning a little bit to Greek polytheism, Hellenic polytheism, and connecting with the spiritual traditions of my ancestors. And what I found out when I delved into this is that a lot of the beliefs I already had and developed previously, for example, around reincarnation, etc., were still in alignment with what the ancient Greeks were practicing, which got me realizing that New Age is actually very old age because they had the answers. Somehow we chose to ignore them, and now we're trying to rediscover them, but they've been discovered. And here we are.
You know, it's beautiful to listen to your story because one of the underlying currents seems to be your ability to follow your intuition.
Which is so feminine.
Definitely. And it's rather than that like linear, logical, well, I'll do this in this step, and then this will happen next, and I'll make it this happen. And it's the more we are on this spiritual path, it feels like the doors are always kind of opening up, and we just have to have our eyes open enough and kind of get out of our own head. Can you talk about the importance of intuition and how that's led you really down more of this path, and maybe what other people can do to start listening to theirs? Because I think that's just such an important topic as we move along here, because we don't get taught this in school. It's just rote memorization, mathematics, memorizing formulas. It has nothing to do with like, well, what's it saying on the inside? Yeah, nothing about that. Please talk about that, because it seems like you're really embodying this point that I think is so important.
Such an important point, because what people need to realize first is that God, spirit, source, your spirit guides, angels, whatever you want to call it, they're desperately trying to get your attention, and they're constantly trying to do so. The guidance is always coming. The signs are always coming. You cannot miss them if you choose to open yourself up to receiving them. Just having this understanding, I feel, just makes connecting to your intuition easier. Second point, we're all intuitive. We're all psychic. I was never the gifted kid who saw dead people in my sleep and had my grandma like try to like wake me up. Like you hear so many stories of like psychics, like, oh, I was born with this gift. No, it's not a gift. You just learn how to develop it. Yes, some people have developed more, but I worked my ass off to do this work. I was like the most muggle kid you could have ever imagined. And I just worked myself out to become a wizard. And I feel that we can all do this. It's all about choosing to do the work. I believe that consistent work will always trump talent. A talented person can get to a certain point if they don't work it. Someone who's mediocre but has a lot of passion and work ethic and puts in the consistent, keyword consistent work, will overtake someone who's just talented that doesn't put in the work. So just realizing that A, we're born intuitive, B, source is trying to catch our attention, just makes things immediately more easier. And then it's just a matter of like technicalities, learning practices that can help you tap into your intuition. An easy practice is realize what's your dominant intuition language. Are you receiving mostly guidance through visions, through senses, through hearing, through taste, through smell, through just a sense of knowing? And once you figure that out, you can start seeing the signs more potently. Now, actually, in Secrets of Greek Mysticism, at the end, I have 2 appendix chapters, and those are all about connecting with your intuition and receiving a specific sign. And I have a very specific guidance as to how to ask for a sign, how to recognize the sign, so you can receive it. For example, signs are usually spontaneous. You don't expect them. And secondly, they're something out of the ordinary. Like you wouldn't like ask for the universe, okay, give me a black car as a sign. I mean, the streets are full of like black cars. The
Mine's
example
actually
that
a
I
pink car.
well, yeah, but talking about that, the example that I provide in, you're gonna love this. The example that I provide in the book is like, okay, ask for a holographic car because, and I'm like, and I quote, Paris Hilton has one in brackets. So ask for something because it's very important to ask for a sign and give it a time period. Like, okay, give me a sign within the next 24 hours that's affirmative, that I am supposed to do this. And then you get out there and then you receive a sign spontaneously. It's something that's out of the ordinary. And there are different ways to go about it as well. But that's like the essential like first step to receiving a specific sign.
Yeah, I always say that you have to choose your spirit sign, because if we wait for, well, was that a sign? Was that a sign? Well, I don't know. Is that what you what you demanded as the sign? Because when we leave it to interpretation, if we're just starting out in angel communication, we can be like, I think I'm making this up. Because in fact, everything is a sign. And until you learn to interpret everything that shows up in your reality, it can feel overwhelming, like you're overthinking.
Yeah, I remember Britt and I went on a camping trip one time, and we'd gotten kind of lost. Like we ventured off, we're going to explore around here, and it was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. And what I didn't realize is that there were a ton of animals where we were. And so I could hear all this rustling and all this noise. And like normally I'm not really afraid of anything, but you get lost out in the middle of the woods, and suddenly it's like all those like instinctual survival fears come up. And I'm thinking like, what is about to happen? Like what, and how are we going to find our place back? And it was in that moment, which it seems to only happen to me in these kind of life or death situations where you really start to ask, it's like the whole logical mind goes out and you're like, okay, I would really like someone to help. I'm just whatever can please help, please help. And I will tell you within 2 minutes, this park ranger guy just ends up driving right up to us, like literally
like
right.
Headlights just turn on in the dark in the distance and start coming towards us. And we're like, this is crazy.
And he hops out of the car and he has the most magical blue eyes I've ever seen. It was just like it's like someone created a character in a book.
Yeah, the first thing he said was, there's nothing to be afraid of. How you know that? How you know we were just tripping out here like by ourselves in the woods? And that was pretty much all he said. There's only deer and raccoon. There's nothing to be afraid of. And then he circled around and drove off. That was it. He didn't say anything else. It was the craziest, just like angel showing up in physical form. And what's even more weird, George, is I set the intention on that camping trip that we were going to meet our spirit guides. So we're going to go on this sabbatical into the woods and we are going to meet our spirit guides. And I'll be damned if he didn't show up in a park ranger truck to let us know, don't be afraid. And isn't that just the most deep symbolic wisdom of all life? Is we're not here to be afraid. We don't have to hide anymore. We won't be killed for our message. In fact, we'll be exonerated and exalted in a way that puts us into a power position of leadership, not from an ego standpoint, but we're making actual impact here. We really can make change.
And while you were saying that, by the way, I got a notification. I have affirmations coming on my phone every 30 minutes. And the affirmation that came up while you were talking at 1:01 right now here where I am, 11th of April, so 1111, was life unfolds easily and effortlessly. While you were talking about how this just happened really easily and effortlessly. You can't make this shit up.
Wow, I was wondering what time and day it was over there. You're in the future.
I'm in the future. It's 11th of April for me right now.
That's insane. Yeah, he's absolutely in the future.
It's so beautiful. I want to go back real quick to your Protect Your Light book. And that is because I feel like this is one of the biggest obstacles that comes up for any light worker. People get excited. They're like, oh, I've wrestled some of my demons. I've overcome some trauma. I got to tell somebody about it. Some of the modalities that I've tried actually work. I got to start talking about it. I mean, I remember the second that I started using hypnosis, I'm like, I got to tell people about this. I can't keep the secret inside. This was amazing. How do people not know about this? And so you can get so filled with that energy and that exuberance. And especially like as you tell people about it and you see that it's transforming their lives, it just fills you with more energy. but it's that protection part. It's that boundary part that trips so many of us up. It's so easy to take on all of your clients' problems. It's so easy to accept them as your own. How should light workers be focused in, and how can they make sure that they're sort of bulletproofing themselves so that when they do show up to do their good work, it doesn't crush their spirit and their soul and then they end up quitting? I mean,
Or having a stroke like my mom.
we were just talking about that right before the podcast started, is the fact that we've all been around the block a while now. And I feel like one of the only reasons why we've been able to stick it out is because we've gotten better at doing this specific part.
Consistency too.
Yep.
Like, I've never not seen George not post on Instagram and continue to share your journey and your wisdom. So is that the first step? Like, how do you as a light worker start sharing this gift without burning out?
So I define energy protection as the art of being energetically authentic. It's about ensuring that what's ours is ours and what's theirs is theirs. And the first step is realizing that we have an energy field, and our energy field is like a sponge, but it's also like it's both a sender and a receiver. It sends energy and it receives energy. If we don't take care of that, and if we're not aware of that, then we can allow other people's energies to become our own. And that means we'll end up thinking other people's thoughts, feeling other people's emotions, behaving in ways that are not in alignment with who we really are, and essentially living other people's purpose, living other people's lives. Once we realize that, then we realize the importance of protecting our own energy. Now, alignment with who we truly are is the most powerful energy protection tool there is. Once we've meditated and we've established that sense of connectedness and oneness with the universe, that's protection. That immediately creates powerful energetic shields around us. We need energy protection when life happens, because we're not meant to be connected to source and love and light 24/7. We go through life, it happens, we have to do something about it. So energy protection practices is a way for us to bring ourselves back home. For this reason, I wrote Protect Your Light to provide like practical steps to doing so. Now, the main 3-step process that I use in the book, it's a 7-step process, but the main 3 steps are identify, clear, and shield. We need to spend time daily identifying what is within our energy field, and we can feel that in terms of energy, but also thoughts and beliefs and emotions. Then clearing it using all the amazing tools that we like to use in the spiritual community, Palo Santo, saging, but also like energy light-based processes. And then shielding, creating energetic shields around us beyond the freaking white light bubble. Everybody talks about the white light bubble. Yes, it's a powerful shield, but it can only do so much. As life has gotten more complex, our energy shields need to also get a little bit more complex so we can really protect ourselves. So in the book, I talk about amplifying shields, repelling shields, and transmuting shields to protecting ourselves. And then when we take the time daily to align our energy to who we truly are and to keep our energy protected, then we connect to our energetic authenticity. Our true purpose and soul comes in, and then we no longer ask questions as to when should I post? What should I post? How should I do it? What should I teach? The ideas just start coming. When our energy is clear and connected to who we truly are, we no longer ask questions. We just know the answers and we take step towards them.
I think that's such great advice. And one of the tools that I use on a daily basis to clear my energy is getting in the shower. I notice on days when I come home from salon, days where I'm literally working in their auric field and touching their physical body, if I come home and don't take a shower, I just feel drained and dead. And I want to sit on the couch, eat food, and not move and do anything. But I started becoming very disciplined about getting home and immediately getting in the shower before I even make dinner, talk to Chris, or do anything. And that totally revives and reamps my energy, where I leave that hat behind and I step into the present moment of like, I'm here for me, I'm here as a wife, and I'm at home. No one's energy is coming in with me. So I think that's another great tool that everyone is hopefully doing on a daily basis because they're getting in the shower, just bringing in to it.
Yeah, water is a conductor of energy. It
Mhm.
literally carries energy. And in the book, I talk about this process. I call it a unicorn shower, where you ask your unicorn guide to fill the water in the shower with a rainbow ray. That's a high vibrational like frequency of light. So while you're showering, you're also like cleansing yourself energetically in exactly the process that you just talked about. And it's a powerful practice.
Yeah, I always give it a color based on the day. Like, what does the energy look like today? Some days it's brown and murky. Some days it's like high vibing purple. And, you know, speaking of auras and colors, I just feel called to share that when I'm looking at you, you're radiating the most vibrant orange color right now, like full on in your sacral creative chakra right now.
That is actually my favorite color over the past couple of years. It used to be red, and then it turned to salmon pink, which is essentially orange. And it has to do with sexuality and explains why I have a sex podcast.
Exactly. Oh, this has been so good. I'm curious, in the book, in all of your books, I love that you give practical tools and tips on how to do this, not just what it is or why it is, but actually how to embody and take action. I noticed in the Secrets of Greek Mysticism, you also had a section on rituals. Is there a particular ritual that you are drawn to at this time in your life? Because I know, just like me, it's probably changed throughout the years. There might be some constants, but is there one that you're drawn to mostly right now?
Yes, it is the new moon ritual. According to the ancient Greek calendar, it's called the Numenia ritual. Numenia means the first day of the month. So the ancient Greeks, they followed a lunar calendar. So they spend their lives according to lunar months, following the journey of the moon from new moon to full moon to like dark moon. And the first day of the month, the Numenia, was the most sacred of all the days of the month. It was a day that no public celebrations could take place, no state things would happen. Everybody would focus on setting their intentions for the month ahead. They would spend the time clearing their altars, updating their offerings, and honoring the household gods and really honoring the house, both like figuratively and also like metaphorically as well, our spiritual hearth. And therefore honoring Zeus, honoring Hestia, literally the goddess of the hearth and the house, and all the gods aligning with that. So the reason I love that is because we can get a fresh start every new moon. Like whatever happened previously, the previous month, we can let it go and we can tell ourselves, you know what? Let's start fresh. And it's a great reminder to reset our inner energy and our outer energy, whether it is clearing our energy if we forgot to do our energy clearing practice, whether it is restarting our spiritual practice with meditation or whatever it is we want to practice, whether it is clearing clutter in the house, refreshing our altars, bringing fresh energy into the house, and telling ourselves that, you know what, it's okay. It's okay if I wasn't perfect. In the epilogue of the book, I share a story that while I was finishing writing this book, I was simultaneously rehearsing for a Greek production of Mamma Mia. I was practicing for drama school exams. I was trying to finish that book. I was trying to have a life. I was doing so many things. And I had forgotten to do like all my different rituals. And there I was telling people, you need to do 3 rituals every single month, blah, 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 blah. And I hadn't done any for months. And I'm like, who am I to like teach this? I felt like an imposter. And in that moment, I paused. And frustrated as I was going through my notes from 2017 when I trained in like the ancient Greek polytheism. And I saw a note from my teacher that said, you don't need to search outside of yourself to find the gods. You're already swimming in the ocean of the gods. And in that moment, I realized, okay, I can pause, give myself some grace, forgive myself for falling off the bandwagon of my spiritual practice, and realize that it's okay to start again. And in that moment, I placed my hand on my heart and I'm like, I told myself, wake up. And in that moment, I'm like, okay, right now, just saying this wakes up something within me, that divinity within me, that idea that we're already connected with the divine and I don't need to have to do all these practices. The divine is already here. But it was that idea of you can start again and you can forgive yourself and it's all good. And it's just a ritual, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think it's so true. All these external rituals are just reminders to be in that present moment and embody your power. And once you have the taste of it, you don't really need the tool as much anymore because you've gotten to that point. It's like training wheels on your bike. You know, all of these rituals serve as a training wheel to stay in alignment with our spirit. But if we're living that conscious day-to-day present life, although it may be busy amongst all the fun things that you've chosen to do, it sounds like you were just living your purpose and not needing to try. And that to me shows the evolution of where your spiritual practice is at, where we don't have to lean on the tools and the rituals and the incense and the cards because we are already it.
Exactly.
So freaking good, George. I could talk to you forever, especially hearing you say purpose. Like, oh, just lights me up the way you say it. It's so beautiful.
You know what? It's very interesting because I'm training. I'm an actor right now, and I'm also taking American accent training right now.
Let's hear it.
No, you're not gonna hear it. Not yet, because I'm still taking it. But the idea is, I go to London, okay, and I go to record my book, and they're like, "Oh, your accent it sounds a little bit American." Then I talk to Americans, they're like, "Oh, your accent sounds so British." So it's really a mix of both, and I need to figure it out. I need to speak American when I want to speak American and speak British when I speak British.
No, just be you because it's so beautiful. And in fact, one of the reasons why I love you so much is because you're not just like every other y'all or American or British person. You chose to come in through that lineage and connected to that line for a reason. So please embrace it. I just love it so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, George. So before we wrap up, I'm curious, where to next? Like what are you curious about right now?
Well, acting is a big part of my life. I'm embracing that aspect of me, and I'm doing a master's in musical theater afterwards. I'm fully stepping into musical theater, and I love it. When it comes to my spiritual work, I have another book coming out in November that I haven't announced yet, but I guess I'm announcing right now. It's called Ancient Manifestation Secrets, and it's really blending Protect Your Light and Secrets of Greek Mysticism by teaching how to manifest by working with the energy field. And it's all based on the ancient school of Hermeticism. And therefore, we're drawing from the 7 laws of the universe of the Kybalion and the energy field. And I teach people how to use the laws with the energy field to manifest. And I'm so excited to step more into that manifestation work as well.
It's going to be so powerful because I believe that when you take a light worker and they begin to overcome their things, they begin to overcome the trauma, they begin to accept themselves, they sort of see that light, they finally see that light and say, I want to share this. The next big goal is, how can we manifest? It's like, how can we take this energy and how can we share it so much? I feel like a lot of people try to put the cart before the horse, and they always try to manifest first.
It's like trying to open your third eye before you open your heart. Like, good luck with that. That's going to be a lot of information coming through.
And to your point earlier, a lot of times when we do it that way, we end up just manifesting the same crap that we've been told our whole life. We manifest the same stories over and over again. We just change the characters a little bit, but we're still the same us. And the second that you really work on yourself, the second that you, like you mentioned, you got to put work in.
Light workers got to work, not light workers got to sit around and eat grapes.
Yeah, like this is, it's a struggle. Like, you have to deal with a lot of dark nights of the soul. And the second that you do that, and the second that you come out that other side and you feel that forgiveness and you start to realize that so much underneath everything is just love, it is so time for you to run full speed. I mean, that is the time to get excited, because that's where the manifestation actually begins, because you can finally manifest the things you really want, not just crap you've been told you may want.
Yeah. And that's why in Ancient Manifestation Secrets, I include a whole section about doing the inner work, and I bring that as part of the manifestation process, because I'm so tired of seeing the same 3-step, 5-step processes that have nothing to do with dealing with fears and limiting beliefs. So I include practices to healing limiting beliefs cognitively and energetically. I teach the eye movement process, for example, in that book, which is all about going back and doing the inner work. And people wouldn't expect that, because I make claims such as the law of attraction is not the most powerful law in the universe, which I hear all the time in the spiritual community. I'm like, it is a powerful law, but there are many other laws in the universe that we cannot ignore. And same thing with doing the inner work does not lower your vibration. It actually raises your vibration in the long term, but you have to go through the process.
Mhm. Yeah, George, you're such a phenomenal speaker. I've gotten to witness you share the stage with some incredible names, not that yours isn't, but just showing the caliber in which you're at. The question that is coming to mind is, if you were given the stage one last time with a mic in hand, what would your message be to the world?
God, you're such a great speaker yourself. Like, look at how you just phrased that. I'm like, where is she going with this? I'm like, okay. So my last piece of advice, and this is a piece of advice that I give to everybody, is that in the spiritual community, we have so many tools. We love our tools and our bells and our whistles, like so many things to express. But really, it all comes down to tuning in within, tuning into our heart, that is a doorway to our soul, and connecting with the love and the divinity that's always within us. Literally, our body is the most powerful tool we need. It's the most powerful divination tool. It's the most powerful energy clearing tool. Yes, you can use your Palo Santo, you can use crystals, aura sprays, whatever, but you can also use your own hands and your own energy and your own intention to move energy, to heal stuff, to predict things. Yes, you can use your wonderful oracle cards to do so and all the amazing like oracle tools, but you can also use your own body as a divination tool. So really taking back our power and realizing that our body, our energy field is powerful, that I feel is the number one message that I want to share with the world. And as I'm thinking about it right now, even with my acting work and my singing work and my performing work on stage, like speaking, it all has to do with our presence, is our power. And when we share and we embody our message and who we are, then that is powerful and that creates change in other people's lives and in our life as well. And most importantly, in the world.
Oh, wow. That feels like the perfect segue to end with the last question that we always love asking our guests. And that is, what does living an elevated life mean to you?
Ooh, going about it daily, like elevating something about you daily and realizing you can never be fully elevated. Like every single day, you can do something to elevate who you are. Reach for greatness, not mediocrity. Like, hear this, okay? So the ancient Greeks, like the ancient Greek playwrights, for example, like Sophocles and Euripides and Aeschylus, they wrote hundreds of plays. That's hundreds of books. We write a single book and I'm like, ooh, like I'm such a genius. And I'm like, why stop? If they could do that, why are we not doing that? They were polymaths.
TikTok.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, TikTok. Like 30 seconds, you know everything. No, it's not like that. Like they used to be polymaths. Of course, there is way more knowledge to learn now. But it's this idea of constantly elevating, constantly searching for more, not becoming complacent with yourself and with life. And people tell me, oh, when are you going to stop like doing things? Because I'm doing my 5th degree right now. And like, when are you going to stop? I'm like, why stop? Like life is fun. We're here to learn. Why stop? So why stop elevating? That is my question.
I love George.
So good. It seems like the key word in your conversation today is consistency. It is just literally light workers doing the work. Just show up, put in your 10,000 hours and it will all happen. It's just a matter of not giving up. And I think that's such a beautiful piece of wisdom that you've offered our elevators here today. And I thank you so much for continuing to shine your light and share your courage and your authenticity. It is so beautiful. It shines all the way across the globe. And I literally cannot wait to see what is next from you, George. You always surprise me in the best kind of way.
Thank you, Bridget, and thank you, Chris. I really appreciate you being here, and I love our conversation.
Always. So tell our elevators where they can soak up more sparkle magic from you, George.
So you can find me on Instagram at George Lizos. When you get my new book, Secrets of Greek Mysticism, you can go to greekmysticism.com actually. And when you get it, you also get a free workshop with me all about meeting your guardian Greek god or goddess. And of course, you can learn all about my services, my workshops, etc. on my website, georgelizos.com.
Oh, George, you are such a pleasure. And you are so known for doing polls in your group. So I have a poll for everyone to come and answer to George and us. If you're a light worker, if you identify with like sensitive empath light worker, were you blessed with a narcissistic parent? I'm kind of curious in our conversation today, how many light workers chose to come in the hard way? Or are we alone in this? Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, George. Any last words that you feel called to share?
That's it.
We are complete. Thank you so much, George. Y'all go soak up his beautiful magic and know that your life purpose is meant to be in joy. So find what lights you up and do the work. Until next time, peace.